Hi, I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we all have transitions in our life, and I use the metaphor of something that I do, which is triathlons. That's when you get in the water and you swim, and you get to the transition area, and then you bike, and then you transition again, and then you run. And that is a metaphor for what our lives are about. Today I have a special guest, Shelly Liles McBurney, who's had many interesting transitions in her life. And we're going to start from the beginning, go from writer, Girl Scouts, art gallery owner, and the next part. It's all very fascinating. And welcome, Shelly.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your beginnings, where you were born and how you transitioned into college, became a writer, and there's kids involved too. Tell us about that.
Wow, you really are going back to the
Way
beginning.
back, way back.
I was born in a little town west of Nashville called Kingston Springs. I'm a fourth generation native of that beautiful little town.
Wow, I did not know that.
My great-great-grandfather was a country doctor, and so I have lots of family there still. But I eventually went to college. I moved out to California and studied journalism at a university there, and lived in California for a few years before coming back to Nashville to work as a print journalist. And so that was kind of the first of three beloved careers that I've had.
Wow. When you say print journalist, what does that mean? You were a writer?
I was. I actually started working at the Tennessean when I was still in high school. I used to make the 75-mile circuit from my home in Kingston Springs to the only high school in Cheatham County, which was Ashland City. And then from there I would go to Nashville to go to work at the newspaper, work till midnight, then drive back the 20-something miles to go back home. So I had a very early experience in work and meaningful work, and I love work, and I loved working in the newspaper field.
Wow. Okay, so you went to college in California and got a degree in journalism?
I did. I came back to Nashville and worked kind of as a regional reporter. Then I went to the Washington, D.C. area and worked for USA Today in what was a loaner program, where Gannett was basically loaning its employees, its staff, to USA Today, which was and is owned by Gannett. So I did that for a while and loved that, and returned to Nashville to write for some city publications and freelance for regional and national business publications. And I did that for several years, and then I moved on to nonprofit management, which again was something that I loved. I honestly answered a blind ad for a management position with a nonprofit, and it didn't really even indicate what the nonprofit was, but I thought, well, you know, this sounds interesting, and I think I'll maybe do this for a year and then return to journalism. But I got so hooked into the mission of that organization, and it became for me, as a parent of two daughters and really caring about women's issues and issues impacting girls worldwide, it became something that for me never felt like work, but was really just a great passion. So in that capacity, I worked as the Senior VP of Marketing for the Girl Scouts, the regional office of Girl Scouts, and then later also handled fund development. But I was there for 13 years, and again, I loved working in that capacity. So that was my second career. Yeah.
Wow. And when you were doing the nonprofit work with the Girl Scouts, you also were raising your children?
I was raising two daughters, absolutely. And so, you know, today's girls and throughout recent history, young women have so many pressing issues that that deal with financial issues, learning to be independent and resourceful, as well as self-esteem issues, body image issues.
Body, yes.
It goes on and on and on. And so it felt good for me to be caring for my own daughters and trying to do my small little part to contribute to an organization that was looking more globally at women's issues.
And were you a single parent also?
I was for part of that time, and then I met my wonderful husband, and we married, and I remained with the Girl Scouts for a number of years after that before I decided to really take a risk and to do something that I had always longed to do but never had the guts until then. So I transitioned to my third career, which was to open my own business and be the director and the owner of a commercial art gallery. Yes.
That is so different than journalism and nonprofit and then art gallery.
They are very different, but each job kind of segued in some interesting ways to the next career. For instance, when I was in Washington writing for USA Today, my beats were small business and retail. And so I would go to national conferences on those subjects, and I was very interested in entrepreneurism and what it took to start up and grow and succeed with a small business. So in some ways, some of that information early in my journalism efforts were helpful down the road as a business owner. And then, of course, anytime you do marketing and fundraising, those skills also translate or transfer very well to running your own company.
What was the impetus to do that? Are you an artist yourself? Do you have a kinship with artists? How did you even know who to have, and you got to sell them to make a living?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an artist. I'm a novice painter who did, before I opened the gallery and lost the time to create art on my own, but I did for mental therapy paint and loved that. And I had many, many friends who were artists. And so I had been in that field a little. I had studied art history somewhat in college and collected a little art, loved art. And I wanted to be in the presence of art and those who create daily. And running a gallery is a great way to do that. And I always knew that I would probably be a better art gallery owner than artist, so it worked out well. Yeah.
Is there, just starting from zero, and well, I'm going to own an art gallery, and I know something about art, how did you even choose what artists? I mean, did you have consultants that kind of helped you go?
No, I really did it all on my own. It was through a lot of research. It was, there at the beginning, it was almost comical because here I was, having never owned an art gallery or run a gallery, and I'm calling these mid-career artists who have works in major collections.
Wow.
Who are, fairly known, and I'm calling them out of the blue, trying to convince them to take a risk and show in my gallery. And some of those folks I had to call again and again and again and do the best possible sales job, pitch to them as I could. But I think for some of them, they saw that I was very passionate about art and that I would work very hard on their behalf, and I did. So I'm frankly of the mindset that nothing really should be off limits. If you really are interested in doing something, you can learn how to do it, through hard work and study and research and some trial and error. Then you can accomplish whatever your heart's desire. Yeah.
Wow. And so how long did you have the gallery until the next transition?
Well, the next transition, unfortunately, was not as exciting as the prior three, but I owned the gallery for almost 9 years, and I
9
sold it. I
years?
did, almost 9 years. It was not quite 9, but I sold it December the 1st to a great, smart, savvy young woman from Knoxville.
That's an amazing testament to have started from zero experience, to have it a wonderful entrepreneurial business, and to be able to sell it. That's amazing.
It was a lot of fun, and you know, I had my heart and soul into that place. I mean, I literally did everything from the build out. I mean, I designed architecturally what I wanted. I even acid stained the concrete floors myself.
You did that?
With the help of my daughter's then boyfriend. I'm sorry to say he's no longer her boyfriend after that experience.
Oh no!
But it was fun transforming that space into a place of that could really showcase art. You know, I really like the white box galleries that showcase the art and aren't cluttered and have a lot of distraction from other things. But I think it's a beautiful space.
Wow. So what the reason that you ended up selling it, I understand there was kind of some health challenges that kind of came out of the blue. Am I correct?
Most certainly. I was moving along in my business and enjoying myself, and you know, I had a workout buddy. We would meet to, you know, work out. I don't know, 3 times a week, and had no indication whatsoever that anything was wrong with me, other than one morning I just woke up with the most excruciating headache. Not your average headache, but what became, you know, a headache that felt like literally my head was just going to explode off my shoulders. I would have to walk and hold my head. So that headache led me to the doctor's offices and eventually to the emergency room to have an MRI. And sure enough, there was a pretty substantial tumor in the cerebellum of my brain, which they indicated would need immediate surgery. So they did and determined that it was metastatic melanoma that had spread to other organs, and they removed it. I was in and out of the hospital, I guess about 10 weeks in the last year. So I had those two emergency surgeries. As soon as I got home from brain surgery, about 3 weeks later, I had another related emergency surgery related to the cancer. And then I started this treatment called immunotherapy. Immunotherapy through Vanderbilt. And I must give a shout out to my most awesome oncologist. He is really just the best, Dr. Salzman.
Dr. Salzman.
Salzman at Vanderbilt. He is really a national expert in melanoma, and I was fortunate. I mean, literally, the day after my brain surgery, I'm still in the recovery room, and I'm like texting and, you know, researching on the computer who the very best are, and and how lucky was I that one of the best is right here in Nashville.
Wow, that's great.
So that has been kind of my experience. I mean, it's been a most interesting time. But yes, I did the immunotherapy, which is a very toxic, extremely difficult treatment plan. And the percentage of those who respond to immunotherapy with the stage and type of cancer that I have is fairly low. I mean, 15% respond in some fashion. They respond favorably, let me say that.
Only 15%?
Only 15% respond favorably, meaning that they will have some partial or full response to that therapy. And then of that 15%, 5% can actually go into remission, long-term remission, living years past their prognosis.
Wow.
And I knew the odds were low, but you know, you have to do what you have to do. And so I suffered through that and am absolutely beyond ecstatic to learn and know that I'm in the 15% that had a favorable response.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
we will see if I make it to the 5% that go into remission. But I feel great. You know, I'm doing well. So I'm very hopeful.
And this therapy that you did, is this like, you're not using the word chemotherapy, which a lot of people use when they are dealing with cancer. It's an
Immunotherapy.
Immuno.
It's very different. It's an in-hospital treatment.
Is it intravenous?
Yes,
and
you don't go into the hospital and get your chemo and then leave.
Right.
So also in there, you know, there were several sessions of stereotactic brain radiation to make sure that the tumor, there was no residual cancer there, and there's not. But with immunotherapy, you go into the hospital, and for a period of 5 days, you receive infusions of a substance called interleukin-2.
Interleukin.
Every 8 hours.
Okay.
And and it makes you horribly sick in so many different ways, but you get very sick during that process. Then you go home and recuperate for a few days. Then you come back in for another 5-day treatment of the same. And I did that for spread over a few short months, 8 different weeks.
Wow.
And some people don't even make it through the 8-week treatment, but I pushed myself and I did the best I could. And I'm no doctor, so I'm reluctant to explain or attempt to explain how that whole treatment works. I, in the most elementary fashion, can just say that it kickstarts your immune system to fight off the cancer. And you know, when you start to get sick, how, you know, you start to get sick, how you feel like you've got the flu and fever and aches and chills and all that stuff. Well, it's like that in overdrive.
Wow.
And much more. So anyhow, but the good thing is that I went through the treatment and it is working. So I'm very thankful that there was an option for me that could help me, and that I had just the most incredible team of doctors and healthcare professionals there at the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center.
How has your life changed? Has your attitude toward life changed? Are you traveling more? Are you doing things like, oh, I never got to do this, I guess I better do this? Or is that kind of an attitude?
I am traveling more, but that's not necessarily a result of my cancer diagnosis. I've always loved to travel. It's just that now I'm not tied to a physical space every day. So I have the time to travel. So in that way, I don't know that my latest transition or my diagnosis has affected that so much. And really, I think the things that I already knew have just been profoundly proven true in terms of what is important in life.
Which is what?
Time with loved ones.
Family?
Family. Today, you know, people, myself, I'm guilty as well, waste too much energy thinking backwards and looking forward. And to be able to savor the moment is something that this illness has really taught me in really tangible ways. And so, you know, I had already come early in my treatment and diagnosis. I had already come to a place of peace and acceptance in terms of what may or may not happen to me, and just the uncertainties of not knowing that. And so it was kind of a surprise, a delightful one, certainly, to know that I have this new lease on life, and I can reinvent myself yet again.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
And so what are you going to be reinventing yourself to? Do you know yet?
Well, somewhat. Of course, it's a work in progress, but I certainly want to stay in the art field because that's where my passion is. That's where my love is. I won't be opening up another gallery in Middle Tennessee, but I will be serving in the capacity of art consultant for individuals and businesses and institutions. And my first project was I helped with the estate of the late Sylvia Hyman, who was an exceptional, internationally renowned ceramicist that lived in Nashville. And the family asked me to assist them.
And she died in her 90s, was
95.
it? 95.
Passed away in December.
Do that ceramic stuff that looked like paper, but it was...
Yes, it was trompe-l'oeil, and
Yeah.
she had a long and industrious career and was an exceptional person as well as an artist. So I was thrilled to assist the family in that. And from there, I've got a couple of smaller projects, and I'm really looking to grow this consulting business.
Wow, that is terrific. Now, in hindsight, and it was only a year ago when you got your diagnosis with a bad headache?
Yes.
Yes,
it's amazing
it's
that all
amazing.
that's happened in a year.
In 1 year, talk about some transitions, health-wise, doesn't look very good, and you are of the small percentage that this treatment is working, and you look fabulous, and you are looking forward and planning forward. And in fact, I know you're going to be leaving for Turkey
Today.
Yes. After we finish this TV shoot, which is pretty amazing. So in hindsight, do you have any advice if somebody else wakes up with headaches and starts to go on the path that you had? Is there anything that you would change, or is any advice you'd give to somebody?
I don't know that there's anything I would change necessarily. Advice in terms of just from a health perspective, I would say, listen to your body. And, honestly, my first couple of visits to a doctor, someone I had been seeing for some time, I, in retrospect, clearly see that they weren't taken very seriously. It was, maybe you're coming down with the flu, or I'd get kind of lost with the front desk answering the phone, and that was very frustrating to me because this is a very deadly disease. And thankfully, I kind of took matters into my own hands and went to the emergency room. So if something is atypical for one, don't assume necessarily it's a fluke. I don't mean to become suddenly paranoid, but ultimately we're responsible for doing what we can in our control to protect our bodies and ourselves and our mental attitudes as well. And
especially women, I think, need to. So many, the old school, well, the doctor said this, he must be right, or she must be right,
Well, it's my nature to question and to delve further. Maybe that's the journalism training in me. I don't know, or maybe it's my nature, but I think it's important that if something doesn't feel right, there's no real harm done in pursuing it further. Because ultimately we have to take responsibilities for what we do and what we don't do in regards to our health.
Wonderful. Do you have any sage words that you want to leave our visual audience?
I believe that I'd say trust God. It sounds so simplistic, but it is so profoundly true. And it is what has carried me through these experiences. And in fact, all of my more difficult transitions in life, it's been the one foundational thing in my life that I always can fall back on, is that none of us are promised tomorrow. None of us know what the future holds, but there is great wisdom in trusting God. And I hate to sound so simplistic, but that's all I've got.
You just trusted God, and God's been really good to you.
Well, yes, yes, God has been really good, and I do feel called in some way. I don't know exactly what that might look like in the future, but hence the reason I'm here today when I was invited is that I feel compelled to share my story and to perhaps bring hope to some who might also be, dealing with cancer or other illness, to know you never really know what change and turn life can take. I mean, I was in a store the other day and I'm overhearing very close to me this conversation of this one young woman talking to someone and saying, well, such and such has this stage certain type of cancer, and they'll be gone by such and such. And I was so tempted to say, hey, hold on,
That may not be true.
That's not our decision to make, and
Right.
that may not be true. So hope is a great thing, and to never lose hope. You spend enough time in hospitals and you see enough sick people that it's a very transformative experience, and particularly if you've been around sick children and how they somehow manage to muster this joyful smile and this exuberance about them when they're undergoing all those things that both children and adults hate, the constant needle pricking and experimentation and, invasion of their bodies. And so I think we can learn a lot from the trusting nature of children. And I know I've learned a lot from others who have experienced a lot of pain.
Wow. Wow, you are a living example of going through so much, coming out the other side, being open to whatever's next, trusting in God and trust. And Shelly, Liles, McBurney, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you, and we look forward to you coming and visiting again after Turkey.
I would be delighted
Yay.
to. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you very much.